Hello, this is Patricia Rose, and this is my DVD on how to paint on polymer clay. And I'd like to introduce you to Genesis Paints. It is my preferred paint medium to work in. It is a heat set oil paint, and Genesis is the actual brand name of the multitude of colors that they have. And you can go to www.genesis.com and buy it directly from them. And right now I have bought the case, and I have approximately 3/4 of the colors that they make. So, and they're really kind of expensive. They range anywhere from $6 all the way up to $19. So the more concentrated the color, the more expensive it is. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you how to use Genesis paints. Everybody's asking me questions, and so here we go. What happens is, it is an oil paint that you actually heat with either in a home oven or an embossing gun like this. And you can buy an embossing gun in the stamping section, scrapbooking section of most craft stores that carry a lot of stuff, like Michael's or Pearls or whatever big craft store that you live near. I'm sure they're going to carry one, and it's at this time of making this film, it ranges between $25 and $35 for this item, and it gets really, really hot and can burn you. So what happens is you have to cure the paint once it's in place on your doll or on a painting if you choose to use it for that, because this paint is also used for actual oil paintings, but it's for people that are in a big hurry. And you know, you can go to print a whole lot faster if you have a desire to do so. So we also mix it with mediums, just like you would real oil paints, but because this is a real oil paint, but it's especially designed for working with the Genesis paints. We have a thick medium, they have a thinning medium, which I don't have in my other hand, and my preference is the glazing medium. I use this more than anything else to thin with and to make it to the watercolor consistency or a wash for body accent colors, like in the skin folds, like under arm pits and down the spinal column, underneath breasts, things like that. So these are an absolute necessity for thinning the paint. Otherwise, it's really, really thick. Okay, here is how you can buy some of it. It comes in tiny little tubes like this or large containers like this. The general way to buy this is in little pots. And this is the actual paint. These are the glazing mediums. You can buy the paint also in these. And they are they're 1/3 ounce little containers, like that piece of glazing medium, or that container of glazing medium. And you can just get the basic colors. They don't have the variety that you see here on the shelf. But if you know how to mix paints and you have a paint wheel that helps you decide what colors go with other colors, and you have they have white, they have black, they have all the colors that you can mix. These are the basics. So you can get off with only spending a portion of the money that you would have. I mean, I've got hundreds of dollars invested in that shelf. And they also have kits that are little pots like this. Genesis sells little kits that you can buy for, you know, $40, $50, and they come in little pots, and they're really wonderful. So watch your pennies until you're sure that you're really going to do this, you know, get into this doll thing. And so all you really need is these little ones to start with. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the colors that I actually mix to make different flesh tones. Okay, different ones. Let me put them right out here. I start with a container like this. You want to put it on glass only. When I first got my paints, I put big globs of it on a plastic pallet. And in just a few days, and I had it covered over, I didn't have it exposed to dust and everything else, after a few days the paint had soaked into the palette and dried up just like that. Well, here's the other plan. I've had this on the palette for 1.5 years. When it gets low, I just add a little, bit of more of the same color. And it's not dried out. It's still nice and wet. You can see it. So, and I don't even cover it up. You could put some saran wrap or plastic wrap or something over it to keep the dust out. But I don't like to, because sometimes the saran wrap falls into it and you waste paint. So sometimes, or just lately, I've started to keep both of these in a big plastic Tupperware container. And these are really gnarly, but this is what your palettes are going to look like shortly. I prefer this old-fashioned kind of plate because it has a little reservoir that you can actually put the glazing medium, this stuff again, right down in it and keep it from getting contaminated with the rest of the stuff. Of course, here on mine, I've got it all over the place, but this is the actual right way to do it. Okay, this is some of the flesh colors that I prefer, and the bigger the number, like this is Flesh 08, the lighter the color, if you can see. It's a little bit lighter. So I prefer 6, 7, and 8 generally. 5 starts to get a little dark for me. And what I do, that's the actual flesh color itself, but I always mix. I don't use it straight out of the, well, I guess you can use it on occasion straight out of the container. But what you do is you use a palette knife, and there's all kinds of shapes of palette knives, but this is the one that works well for me. And just put it on, whoops, got a little something on the palette knife there. Let me get that off. Put it on your tray. You don't want a whole lot, just a very little bit. Okay, and let's see, I'll do 2 different colors, and here's Flesh 07. Okay, a little bit over here. And then clean it off the palette knife, so you don't want to contaminate the next thing you're going into. Okay, and we do, it's Peril Red 06 is my favorite color to make flesh tones with and accent with, and Peril Red 07 is pretty good as well. It's a little lighter. Remember I said the higher the number, the lighter the color. It takes so little of this stuff, because I don't put a lot of paint on my dolls. I keep it real simple. I used to paint them heavy, and they really look like a bunch of showgirls, so we don't want that, do we? Unless, of course, you do, but, keep it simple. Okay. Now, for an ethnic color, you can use the darker flesh colors if you'd want, but like a suntan doll or something, she'd have Flesh 05 with a little of the Peril Red number 5, different color. And for a really dark doll, I actually use Burnt Umber and Red Oxide. Red Oxide is like a rust color. And if you are doing body folds, you want to mix these 2 together for like underarms and things like that, because basically the child or whatever is really dark, like I'm going to do in my next little episode here. You'll see how it's a really perfect color for that. Okay, and all you do, go down to the palette, and my 2 favorite colors are the lighter ones, like this. Just mix the color in. You can make any color you want. Here's a darker one. Let's put this in a darker. You can have a multitude of colors, even on the same body. It all depends on the accent area that you're going to emphasize, but keep it simple. Don't make the color too heavy for the color of clay that you're using. See? They're all flesh colored with pink undertones. Let's make a really light one. Let's take this light color here, and the extra light Peril 7. I may be pronouncing that incorrect, but it's a strange word anyhow. Real pale. As far as eye color, they have a variety of them. I've got, this is pretty much my eye color tray right here. I just keep them out. You're going to want probably more greens on here, but I'm kind of partial to lavenders and blues and things like that. And you're going to mix a little bit of the lightest color flesh or the off-white. There's a white color that's kind of an off-white. None of them are really solid white. Mix it with like the blue and really lighten it. And see, I've done little bitty pieces right here and there. See how much, little tiny places where I've mixed color to make eye color. It doesn't take much. So don't waste your paint. As expensive as this stuff is, use it sparingly. Okay. What I do after the piece is finished, after I paint it, I use an embossing gun. You can put the doll in the oven, but every time you do, after you've used this paint, you are taking a chance in her cracking or warping or something without the proper support in the oven. I find that if you just use an embossing gun to spot heat an area, even if the doll's wig is on, you can actually, you know, close up, put like a little hairnet or tissue paper over top the wig and go back and touch up her eyes, make them a deeper color, whatever, just spot heat it. And that is how wonderful this stuff is. So, and I use the glazing medium to thin the paint out. Let's say I'm going to do like this body color right here. This is kind of thick right here, so in order to use it, I would just put a little bit of glazing medium over on the side. I keep it in the same area. You don't want to mix it up in here in your little reservoir and contaminate everything. Just right here on the side. And if I can find a clean brush. No clean brushes. Well, wouldn't you know it? Okay. Just mix it up. See how thin it's getting right there? Sometimes that is just enough color. It's just so thin, just a wash. Like for accent colors right over the top of the eyelids, or accent around the edge of the nose wings, or underneath the bottom lip, you know, on the top of the chin area, or a light blush on the shoulders. Of course, you'd want a heavier blush on the cheeks, but that's the way it works. And as far as cleaning up the brushes, you're going to find that it's just simpler, more simple, to leave the paint in the brush. You can clean it with acetone, or do like I do. If you'll notice the palette down here, let me see if I can drag this a little closer so my camera can pick it up. I just keep cleaning the palette knife here when I mix, and then when I go to use the brushes, you want to double this so you don't get it on your surface, you know, double paper towels. Just clean it like this. And that is really all you need. And if it's still contaminated, it's still got a lot of stuff in there, put a little bit of the glazing medium on it and wipe it around. And see, it's still coming off. The color is still coming off. Glazing medium is a lot cheaper than the paint. So, and this is much easier on your brushes than using acetone or harder cleaners, you know, mineral spirits or whatever on them. And when you're working with your paint, always roll it. Just roll the entire thing to make a point. That's really, really important. That's how you paint, because everything is so tiny. And as far as the brushes are concerned, brushes like this, this is a brow line brush. You can buy these from, most paint stores will have this kind of stuff, or craft stores, really nice brushes. You don't get cheap brushes because you're going to be struggling with them and you won't be able to get the detail that you want to put in those tiny little doll faces. Get a brush. This is around $7, $8, but they're well worth it. And then some tiny little ones. Let me show you the brushes real quick on a clean surface. Okay. These are basically what I have. I have brow brushes, a big flat brush for a number of wider applications. I use a lot of glazing medium and I spread it on the doll, so you'll need one of those. You need tiny little brushes for lip liner. You don't want to use the brow line brush for anything else but eyebrows, basically, because it just feathers too far. And then the ultimate pickup tool is this one right here, which I sell, or if you can find one, good. But I had them specially made for me in Germany, because what they are is a paint pickup tool for China paint. China paint is used on porcelain dolls and teacups and really pretty little china dishes, and bone china rather. And it's got a real sturdy, flexible, but lightly flexible pickup end. And what I do is the paint that doesn't work, I just pick it up and I wipe it off. It's all gone just by that. You can make the brow lines look more refined and detailed by using this. And if you get paint where you don't want it, this is the tool. So anyhow, we're going to move right into painting a little black ethnic child, and that will be our next section. Thank you. This is a little ethnic boy that I'm not sure what country he would be from. I'm just made this up, and this is what you do if you're making fantasy figures. You just do anything you want. Anyhow, and I've sculpted clothes on him and hair on him, and he's actually going to have little wings out the back side. He could be a sprite or a brownie or whatever you want to call it, but he's technically a fairy. So I'm going to make a hole in the back eventually and put little wings in it. This is a piece that I've designed, and I'm going to have it manufactured in China. So to manufacture something in China, I don't think that I would trust them to put a, like Tibetan lamb's wool hair wig on him and come out looking really, really nice. So I've made him a figurine. Figurines basically have no fabric outfits on and no Tibetan lamb's fur or natural fiber wig. They're all sculpted, and he's going to have a little base that he walks on too. So I'm going to take you down to the palette and show you what colors I mix for it. And here we go. This is burnt umber. I'm going to show you how to accent colors. You don't have to do this too often, but you'll find it invaluable the more you get into this. A little bit of the burnt oxide. It's actually red oxide. So, and I got it on sale for $8. Good deal, huh? So just mix it up. I do these colors a little at a time, so if I don't get enough on it, I can actually add more. Don't mix up a bunch at one time. They're too expensive. I can't imagine painting a whole painting in this. And I've read the instructions on some of the stuff about painting this with prints and things like that, to do prints with. And they actually put the painting in the oven. Oh my gosh. Well, you can always use an embossing gun. Okay, dark colors like that. I'm going to give you some accent colors. And so what I do always is pretty much the same. This is a pitiful brush, but if you've got some old brushes, don't throw them away. Look at this, how it's fuzzy at the end. This is a great feathering out dry brush, effect brush. So what you want to do is you want to put clean brush in underneath. This is going to be a little piece of like leather that comes across the front of him. And it's like antiquing. It's so simple. Put a little bit down here. I started painting him and then I took it off, and take it off with acetone. It's real easy to get rid of if you aren't happy with the effects of it. Might be a bit much. Multitude of ways you can get rid of it. Okay, now we're going to feather it in. It's exactly like antiquing. And I'm still thinking he might be a little bit too red. You're going to put it under his little arm. You can be real bold with these darker colors so that they show up at all. Put a little bit in his navel. Oops. Get it in there, girl. Okay. And with the colors on the costume, I'm going to put some darker colors in it, or use it right, it's burnt umber, use it right out of the container if you need to. And if you'll notice, I'm not really mixing any glazing medium with it. The glazing medium is to lighten or weaken a color. I need some serious color, like depth. It's almost like drop shadowing here. So I'm going to go ahead and use it pretty concentrated right around in these areas. See, up in the bigger areas. We'll wipe it down some. Always smooth everything out. You want to feather, no matter what you're doing with this Genesis paints or any kind of paint on your doll. Oh, heaven forbid, don't even try to do it with acrylics. Acrylics are nasty. I can't imagine painting a doll with acrylics. And don't make polymer dolls with Sculpey, folks, because Sculpey is a wonderful product and you can use it for a lot of different things, but not for fine, detailed dolls that you're going to want nice skin tones on, because it just doesn't lend itself to that. What it does is it makes moonies and striations, if that's such a word, streaks in the actual body of the clay, and then you've got to deal with that later. And you really can't paint moonies out. I don't care how many flesh tones that you actually buy, flesh colors you buy, it will always show up. You want to try to leave the clay the natural color in the body. And, you know, if you're going to do costume or whatever, and if it's got a problem, put costume over it. Like the other day, I had an owie, I call it Mooney, an owie. It was right here. So she had a little sash that came all the way down with little roses all the way on, trying to cover it up. But that's just what you have to do. There's no way around that. I painted a doll one time, totally painted her with, because she had so many problems. I had mixed clay and it didn't come out well. And the more translucent the clay, the more moonies you will have. So you don't want to do that. And it took me 3 coats to paint the doll and she still looked like crap. So, pardon my French. Don't paint the whole doll. Keep the clay natural. And if you're using the Pro Sculpt clay, I prefer the one that has the most pigment in it, and that's the fairy color, because you won't see moonies. I'll see an occasional one, but it's only when you add clay to it you're going to see it right under the surface. If you don't add clay to the top of it, you've got a better chance of not trapping in air. So, okay, that's basically how we do sculpted fabric. And the same thing applies to the hair. You want to put a little depth in it here and there. It's like drop shadowing. Of course, the hair is going to be colored, different color. And you just have to smooth everything out. We cover quite a bit in this film. There's all kinds of faces and body detail. I'm just showing you coloring on ethnic at this point. So it just takes a while to get it all in there. And this little doll is probably going to have kind of a dark auburn hair. And on the surface of it, we're going to have a bit of this greeny color. You want to keep the paint light. Look at this. See, it looks heavy right here, but it won't be when we're all done working with the color. Keep it simple. Where's my brush? Feather it in. Oops, I didn't even feather that. Keep it natural. You can make it darker if you'd like, or lighter rather. Put some in the front. But see how important it is to feather it in to keep it natural looking. Let the clay work with you. Use some of the flesh tones or dark brown tones underneath. Just let them show through. It's kind of like watercolor. I really like the effects of Genesis. And all I do now is let it heat for a second, it gets really, really hot. I think it's over 400 or more degrees. So if you're holding your doll up here and you can feel it on your finger, that is far enough away. See where my fingers are? That's about as close as you want to get to the doll, because you'll burn fingers and toes really fast. So I'm just showing you some accent colors right now. We'll be getting into the face and eyebrows and eye color shortly. I mix a little bit of pink, and the colors are on my website, and I've used a little bit of taupe, which is actually a flesh color by Genesis. All the paints are by Genesis, by the way. Flesh 07 is the color I call taupe. And if you mix the pink, here's in the tray down here, if you mix the pink and the taupe together, you get what is the perfect body shading color. And I use it under the breasts and the navel, anywhere you have a skin fold or a, like here, get the hair off this, okay, like so. And here's what I do. I put it in there. I don't put it real thick, and immediately I take a dry brush, this is what's called dry brush painting, and feather it. So it doesn't have just a big buildup, and it's feathered out into the areas that have no paint. And it looks more realistic as a body fold. Okay, and let's see, I put it in the ears. It's the same color that I use on the cheek. And I'm going to paint an eye, and here's what I do. I put a little bit of it above the eye, and a little bit, just a teeny bit below the eye, not much. And then I feather it all in. Then I take a light brown to a medium shade brown, and this piece of hair, and where it all comes from, must be those little Pomeranians. Okay, and I put a little bit over top of the upper lid. And don't make it too dark, just a little bit of a line. I do these first because everything has to be shaded in so it looks natural. Okay. Feather it in. And you always do your shading first. And then I take, I use really dark colors. Most of the time it's black. Sometimes it's a real dark green or dark blue. And I paint the iris. Oh, the pupil, pardon me. I always get those two mixed up. How simple is that? Okay, paint that first. Then she's going to have sort of a greenish color eye. And just a tiny little bit of paint. This takes so little. I mean, look at how little the eye is. I mean, here's my thumb. Whoops, that's not a pretty good picture of my thumb. But, and basically, her face is about the same size as my nail bed. Not even my top. I guess it's about half the size of my thumb if you were to measure from the top to here. But it's a tiny little face, and so you need very little color. And I don't paint the whites of the eyes because there's nowhere really to put it, and it's hard to make it natural if you actually put white or even tan in there. And if you want little accents on the green or whatever shade you use for an iris, you just put a tiny little bit on a brush, a brush with one hair in it maybe, and dab it on there for little tiny accents, like the light is caught in her eye, and when you photograph her it comes out really sweet. Okay, and then we have eyeliner, just like me, and I put it all the way out to the corners. Yeah, alright. Okay, all the way out to the corners. It's kind of a fairy thing. It gives you a young look. I learned that early in the 60s when I was in high school. Man, that tells you how old I am. Okay,
get it underneath the lid and all the way down to where the tear duct is. Sometimes you have to do it in several applications because it takes a while to get it on there. And this, I only got a few hairs in this brush anyhow. It's hard to get it just right. Like I said, corners of her eyes turn up. And then I put a few little wispies down at the bottom and separate them. Barely see them. But if you have a really good camera and you take close-ups of them, you would be surprised. They really show up. And when you're, if let's say you're doing an eBay auction and you're putting this stuff on there, they want to see as much detail as possible. So this is a necessary part. And I'm going to do, she's kind of got a sweet but sad face. So, and the reason is because she's hugging the little duck. And so we want to give her a little something extra with her eyebrows, like make a statement with them, like, oh, you poor little ducky, kind of thing. So that means it will be higher here instead of just straight across. She's got more expression on her face. And in my advanced classes, I teach all kinds of ways to paint expression on face. We teach things like how to make teeth and ethnic dolls, everything. And once again, everything's feathered in. Whoops. There's a little bitty glob there. It's too dark right in that one area. Feather it in. Soften it. This is a real sign of an amateur if you've got some hard lines, and these are hard lines. If you don't feather everything. Okay. I'll go back and play with that a little bit more off camera, but because I'm a perfectionist. And I put that same pink on her nose, in her little nose holes. And I put a little bit darker pink, generally, with a little orange or coral mixed in with it, mixed with that pink and taupe together, and put in the center line across her mouth so that it looks deeper. And then on the upper lid, upper lip, and maybe a little bit underneath to give it a little depth, but pink right on the mouth itself. And you can use a little of the same coral color for tear ducts, but not with this brush, obviously. And let's see, let's go back to our pink taupe. And here's a few other little places you want to put it. There's the bone that comes straight down here. You want to put a little bit of it right there and rub it in. Get other things out. Some of the artists that work in polymer don't use paint except for the painted features on the face. They actually just use blush. Now, I don't think that's real permanent, especially if your customer or whoever the end client is going to handle the piece a lot. You're going to lose that blush, and before you know it, they're going to say, that doesn't look like when I bought it. So, might have a little too dark there. Okay, and we have a couple of moonies. There are some flesh tones that Genesis makes that will cover over a few of those little moonies. You can see a little moonie right on the top of her leg right there. I think you can see one there, and you can see one there. It's wherever I added clay, it generally shows up. If you start with a lot of clay on your armature to begin with, and you carve down into it, you won't have as much of a problem with it. And I gotta get her other little cheek, just little circular motions, and that's a lot of clay on that face. She's gonna look like a China doll pretty soon. I mean, a lot of paint on that face. Okay. You want her cute, but you don't want her painted too much. Now I gotta go back and make the other side match. And I always, especially if it's a child, I put a little bit of a blush on the top of her nose. Right there. And a little bit on the forehead, very little. And I always like to outline the top right up here in case you your hairline goes up into it. It looks more natural for some reason, just a little definition. Okay, all that's left is between her toes. I did her fingers somewhat. I did a little in between the fingers, like so. And then I tipped the fingertips with just a little pink on the back side. I did a little on the palm of the hand. I did it on the bottom of the foot. There's some, see right there? Put it on there, just where you would walk and your foot would hit the floor more. It'd be a little redder looking. The bottoms of the toes, in the depth part of the toes. And on the surface of the toes, you're going to be putting it right down between the toes. Don't put it all over the place because you don't want it to look like she's on fire or bleeding, but yeah, I'll take a clean up here. Feather it in. You can put a little on the top of the foot, but I wouldn't put much. But things like around the ankles, you're going to put it there. You're going to put it behind the knees. And between the little bottom here and the back, and look, there's a Mooney right there. It's a big Mooney. I will fix it though. It generally, that's why I like to mix a lighter color with any clay, even Pro Sculpt, because the Moonies don't show up. Besides, most fairies aren't going to be real suntan. They're real ethereal looking. Okay, I think we've got the little nipples to do, and we are done painting this doll.
What I found is to make the best blush for the Genesis with the Genesis paints is to actually load up your brush. This is a little feathered dry brush. And then clean it all out on a rag. And then after it's set for a few hours, clean it out a little bit more on a rag. And it just leaves like a bit of dust in there, and it goes over the cheeks so much more evenly. I put a little across the bridge of the nose. I'm doing the blushing first. Thought I had my hand in the way. Okay, a little bit underneath the chin. Top of forehead. You can just barely see it. And that's the way it should be. You don't want a lot of heavy color on it. Okay, I got my basics in there first. And what I do is I mix a little bit of this pink and the taupe together, and I do little deeper areas right in here. Little nose holes. I used to paint a lot of color on my dolls, but I have really eliminated it now. I'm making them softer because now we have that new Pro Sculpt Light color, which is fairy-like or baby-like, and it doesn't need a lot of color. So, little fat folds in the neck. I use this particular taupe and pink mix, and it's on my website, and all the body crevices like this. I put it on with a regular brush first, and it has a little glazing medium in it. Then I take my dry brush and make sure there's nothing in this brush and feather it in to make it look natural. And the same thing underneath of little areas that you want to highlight. Just a light color. And then always feather them in. It takes so little in the way of color. And here's the one I used on the blushing of the cheeks. I'm going to put a little bit in the center of the chest, just a little bit, to get the shadow the way I want it. And then right where the shoulder blade is indicated, there's a little bit on both sides. There's a little bit of a blush. And on the shoulders. I'm going to just do one side of the body because we don't have a lot of time here. And then load up my brush again with a little bit of taupe and pink. And I'm going to go down and do her little navel. I got a little much color in there, but I'll pull it out. And what you do is, once again, put the color in, feather it in. Just going to show you where you need to put these colors. Right here. Around the wrist. And the actual, the fingertips are lighter, and you're going to have some pink in between the fingers to accentuate them. Make them look like they have a little more punch. They stand out a little more. You got it across the little dimples on the top of the hand. And right across there, and a whole lot of color at the very tips of the fingers, because the tips of our fingers are a little bit pinker than the rest of it. And I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to wipe it off. And whatever's left gets feathered in. We don't want too much color, just a suggestion of color, okay? And then on the fingers, what I'll do is I'll paint a little more pink, just right where the nail bed would be. And then when the doll's completely fired, now this is Genesis paints, and it have to be fired for 250 for 5 minutes at that temperature. So you want to fire this paint on to make it permanent. And then after the nails, the whole body's done, and you want to go back and fix the nails up, just put a little bit of that varnish. It's water soluble, and it's I think it's Ceramcoat. Yeah, Ceramcoat. Delta Ceramcoat. That's what it is. Varnish, matte, and just beat it up, just a little drop on each one of those, and it makes a rounded nail bed. It's really cute. If you want to put that little white thing that they do there, you know, feel free, but babies don't have very long fingernails, so be very careful. Okay, the whole body is like that, really. You just want to put a little bit of accents all over it, and the little nipple, little tiny thing. And it's too pink, but this is the same body fold color that I use. And I actually, when I sculpted it, I came to a little point where the little nipple is, right on the end. And the babies aren't going to be real round. They're going to be, see how much fat there is with this little titty? It spreads out some. The nipple is going to be spreading out to the sides too, as opposed to a totally round, like some pinup girl. Then you blot it, and see how faint that is? And it looks real that way. That's a good look. Okay, we're going to go do her face. And let's see, I've got a little much underneath of her nose. First thing I want to do is pick out a color that I want to use for her eyes. And what do you think? Blue. Blue is what we'll go for. All right. Now, really big eyes. So I'm going to leave it's like she's looking up. So I'm going to leave a little bit of what would be the white underneath of her eye showing. So I'm going to make a round iris, blue iris. Pale, pale blue with a little bit of white underneath. And white, I'm not painting it, I'm actually just leaving it the color of the actual clay. It's plenty light enough. If you're going to put white, you're doing it wrong. If you're going to put beige, that might work, but it doesn't take much color, believe me. So now we want to outline this just a little bit. I'll put a little darker blue at the top. Take your time. That's not too awful. Put a little more blue, the light blue now, back in over top of it. And it'll thin up that dark blue line just a smidge more. Now I actually take a really deep purple or a really dark navy blue as opposed to black. Sometimes I mix all three of them together. I don't really care for black. I don't put it on anything. And I'm going to make the pupil in the center. Just dab it. Take your time. You want to try to get it as circular as you can. The reason I'm getting softer spoken is because I don't want to shake too much. I think I got it. It ain't perfect, but it ain't too bad either. Okay, take that color off your brush. You're not going to be using it for anything. And you want to take some dark burnt umber or really dark brown of some sort. To your preference. Oops. And when you put your paint in the paint, put your brush in the paint, just roll it to a point. And something about these little bitty brushes, it uses all the paint off the very end first. And then you're left with, when you get to the corners, like hardly any paint at all. So that's perfect. So put the heavy concentration of paint right in the center. And it might be a little too dark for our blonde-headed baby. So I'm not going to go too far with this. I'm going to tone it down just a smidge with a sort of a tan color. And I could take a little of the brown that's up there at the top and feather it with the beige, the tan, all the way down into the tear duct. It's cute. And go ahead and make some little tiny lashes with a lighter color. I blot everything just about. And another way is if it's too thick, and I think I got it just a little too thick considering how small a doll this is, you can take your pickup tool, your nail tool, and go back and thin out those lashes. I think that one's growing on us. Ugh, come back here. There, we got it. We tamed it. We're going to put a little eyebrow on it, since I find the right brush again. And use your tan. You don't want to commit to a dark color right off for an eyebrow, because then it's really kind of hard to, you have to take the whole thing off. Sometimes it stains the surface of it. It's not good. So start with a tan color, okay, and just kind of rough it in where you might want it to be. And it's not a Hollywood mover star, so you're actually not going to be putting a big arch on it. You're going to round it out a little bit more. And I've got a little bit smidge off, so this thing is wonderful. Just picks up everything. Look at that. And to make it perfect, like little strokes of eyelashes, or eyebrows, pardon me, a hair each time, you take the tool and you feather the way the brow grows. Okay, And if you want darker color in it, you could put a little bit darker right through the front. And I'll just put a teeny bit to show you how to do that. But she's going to be a blonde, so I like the light color as it is. Just a little bit. If it'll come up out of the brush. It's in there, I know it isn't. I just put it in there. Oh, well. You just get a couple of lines of, you got to get the tip of the brush just perfect. Here we go. Just a little bit darker. Do not let your eyebrows come too close to the center. If you take an invisible line and you're making a, from the side of the nose, just curve around the eye. Somewhere in that vicinity, this little C curve is where it starts. It doesn't start straight up the nose and then go that way. It's just a round curve. Everything on a body is curved. I'm going to put a tiny little bit of, I hope you're able to see this, little tiny lashes underneath, and all you do to do that is a lot like China painting. You make some little dots first, little tiny dots, and then if you're careful you can feather those little dots out towards the side and make little tiny bottom lashes. It's really difficult to see on this, but they're there. Okay, mouth, and like on the interior of the ears and the toes, it's a lot like the body folds. Everything's done in that pink. We're not going to show you every little thing. So I've got the mouth yet, and that will be all we'll do for the painting. And then we get on to the fun part, which is making the wig and putting her wing and costume on. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of kind of a rusty, rosy color and put on the interior of her lips. Now this is where this is the only place you put the heavy dark colors, except for a little bit on the top lip to accentuate the top line. Okay, and let's see if I can find a place to put my hand so it's not in the way. Itty bitty bit. Babies, you want to keep really soft colors. Okay, there's this little divot hanging on the mouth, and we want to make it look like it's bigger than it is. So we'll take some color, and we'll pull it from the center of the mouth up to the sides of that little divot and accentuate that. Then we're going to get rid of this dark red, rosy color, and we're going to put some baby pink in there. And it wouldn't hurt if you had a little tan even. Okay, start with the main color on the bottom lip. This is a cute little baby. My goodness. Surprised even me. Spent a lot of time trying to get this thing together. Ooh, baby. See, I'm not putting a whole lot of color in that thing in the center. I'd leave that just a little bit lighter. Okay. All right. We're really close. Feather a little bit of the red that's in the mouth and the center line, just out just a little bit, but you don't want to take it too far out on the corners. Doesn't look real natural. Just a little bit. And pull some down towards the center. Make pouty lips. Not pulling very easy, but this is a cute little face. I think the nose holes could use a little more depth to them. So while you've got that pretty color that's on the surface of the bottom lip, just stick it right inside the little nose hole. See how that accentuated them a little bit more? That's the color that you need. Looks really natural. Okay, just a little bit more. We're not going to do tons because I don't color them up like I used to. We're going to put a little bit right here. You know, you have a tear duct to deal with. And I'm going to feather that in just about a minute. Since I cleaned up a little mess I made, I can see. Ew. What was I doing there? Okay. Yeah, take a real soft little dry brush and feather that in so that you end up with a little, see where the little area right here where it's depressed right around the bottom of the eye socket. That's what we're trying to accentuate now. And also, as soon as I find the right color, here it is. Okay, I'm going to go on the sides of the nose, and I'm going to put a little bit of pink in there, and even the top of the nose, just a little tiny bit. And I'm going to take my dry brush once again and feather that in. See, I found just recently, not until just recently, that it's better to put the cheek color in first and then go back and do this, because after you get all of this perfect, if you don't get the cheek color in, oh, you can mess up everything that you've done. So, you know, watch what you're doing there. Okay, she could use a little bit more color under the fat folds of her neck. I like that. Looks like a lot, but when you feather it in, it won't be. It'll be just right. And you just take your time and play around with it. And next time you see this little sweetie, she'll have her face painted. So she's going to go in the oven at 250 for 5 minutes at that temperature to fire her. And that's it. Okay, this is a porcelain doll that I did a few years back, and I'm just now getting around to painting her. Oh, I have a house full of dolls that all look the same. No paint, no clothes, no hair, but I figured I would finally finish this one because I found the Genesis paints and they're fabulous. And what I've done with this doll is I have done the porcelain part and got her arms and everything glued on, and then I actually sculpted a bodice out of, it's like granite kind of polymer clay. I don't know whether Sculpey or Fimo makes it, one or the other, but it's kind of cool. It's got all these little variations of color in it, and so anyhow, I'm gonna put all kinds of paper roses and hand sculpted roses all the way around the bodice area here, and on the sleeve, and a sash of roses down the side here, and really foo-foo her up. It'll totally gag you if you're not into feminine stuff. Okay, but I have got to right now finish her paint on her face, and I thought, well, gee, I want to show you how you can actually use Genesis paints to work on porcelain and resin. I've got a resin doll that I've done as well, and you can do anything you want. Here's that little tiny brush. Okay, and it's a matter of control. Generally, it's the hardest thing to do is the eyebrows, the eyelashes, and lip liner. Just take your time, load up your brush, because what's going to happen is going to come right off the tip of the brush, and you're going to have a whole bunch towards the center of the brush, and that's not where you need it. You always need it on the tip. So just keep wiping it off on the paper towel, reapply it on the tip till you get it on there. And don't worry too much about how it's not quite in the right vicinity that you want it or need it, because I'll show you how to get it there. Okay, just get it best you can in the right. I always have this thing for dark, heavy eyebrows, although I don't have them. I just admire the look of dark. It's a sensual kind of look. All right, here we go. Any kind of X-Acto knife or blade, it's going to give you the control that you need. They have paint pickup tools. You have one if you've bought some of my supplies before. We're going to scrape it off with this, and we're going to actually put lines in it. This is the way we do China paint. I I don't know if you're able to see this or not. Make sure they're going the right direction, folks. It's not quite as dark as you want it this way, and it's feathered out. You can do this with a toothpick, or you can do this with your pickup tool, or you can do it with your knife. Here's the tool I was telling you about. Has a moderately hard rubber tip on the end, and it's fabulous for picking up paint. But you don't have to have a fancy tool. You just can use a toothpick. It takes a little longer, but and you can angle this out any way you want it and keep the end wiped off. And this is just a matter of pecking around. That's most of what we do here. We peck around on stuff to get the look we want. You can pull that right out further. Okay. And you know, she's got that Hollywood arch. That's a pretty eyebrow. Okay, now I'm going to do the, I've got the eye color in. I've even got a little bit of whites in the eyes. I'm going to do a top lid, like lashes area. And too much paint on the, load it up there. Okay. Get yourself stationary. Position your hand before you even do it. I mean, have something totally to lean against. Because otherwise, you're going to have it all over. It's just a tiny little area. And you don't want the paint all, you want it real thin right towards the tear duct area. And you can go heavier towards the outside edge of the eye. And you don't want a whole lot going on there. You want to keep it simple. Less is more. Trust me on this. Okay. I'm going to put a little bit down here, just a very little bit. You can barely see it. But, you know, the people that buy these dolls, they have an appreciation for it. And I'm sure they get the magnifying glasses out and say, come look at my doll, honey. Show you what I spent $500 on. Okay, and this one's also good for eyelashes. Load it back up again. But you don't want to put a lot of eyelashes across the top of this eye, ladies and gentlemen, because it's just too hokey looking. You just want to barely put a little bit on the sides. Just put it heavy. Put the heavy part right here, just like a little glob, a little dot. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go back and pull that little piece out just a smidge. This is exactly how they show you how to China paint when you do porcelain. And sometimes because you get the little eye crease in the way, you have to go back the other way. And it's tricky, but that's what you have your little pickup tool for. You can clean it up with that. And the same thing for the bottom lashes. I mean, look how small this doll's head is. There's my thumb. I mean, she's a little over an inch, but not a lot. Just put a little tiny dot and then lightly pull. Tiny dot, lightly pull. 2 or 3 in each of the corners is plenty. Do not overdo it. Okay, now I have a little globby that I'm going to eliminate. I don't like it. Just couldn't get it pulled all the way through there. So just feather it into this part. Make this a little deeper. And voila, we have an eye. I'm going to put a little bit of lip liner on this doll. And I have a pink here, but I got a feeling I'm going to have to put a little more red with it. Just a little more. Doesn't take much color. It goes a long way with this stuff. And you can actually put this doll in a home oven because she's not going to sag on you. She is a porcelain doll, and she's already been in an oven at 1750 degrees, so Trust me, a little heat in your home oven isn't going to hurt her at all. You can take, you want to have fun. Take figurines in your home that you don't especially care for, but they're kind of cool, the sculpt is, but the paint's like really awful. Redo them. Redo Barbies. Redo anything you want to. Dress it. Change the paint around, change the hair around, whatever. And Genesis offers us the chance to really express ourselves. I mean, before this, what we had was, oh my God, we had this god-awful acrylic paint that, why would anybody use that stuff? It's so thick and bulky. Even if you thinned it down the best you could, it's never going to have the pretty effect like oil paint will. And then oil paint, on the other hand, had the effect that we wanted, but it doesn't dry on polymer. It does not dry on polymer clay. Something about, there's some kind of chemical reaction or something with the two. Okay. Okay, you can see where I'm going with this. Pretty much, this is it. I'm going to show you a little something on resin dolls. We'll talk about that next. Okay. Okay, this is an actual resin doll that I'm having manufactured in China. She has she's actually 4 parts. Head, torso, combo, and arms actually have to be glued on with liquid nails. It's great stuff. They make it for crafters now. And then the base and the leg and dress, which all will be decorated later. And I'm going to do a bunch of these things, okay, so that people can buy them and paint them with Genesis paints and decorate them and learn the anatomy while they're doing it. So it's kind of like a redress Barbie or Robert Tonner redo or that kind of thing. But I'm going to show you what I've done on her face for the paint so that when you decide later on if you want to do one of these dolls, they're going to come as a kit, then you'll know what to do. Okay. We're going to focus in on her little eyebrows. This is what I've done. Oh, you can get a really cool effects on resin with this Genesis paint. I painted the eyebrow and I was just all over the place with this thing. But see, the little pickup tool just picks it up really, really easy. And I actually did the little strokes in her eyebrows with my knife. And she has yet to have a surface coat of sealer on her eyes, so she kind of looks kind of strange right now. But you could actually put little silk fibers in there, like from a piece of silk, to make eyelashes that actually stand out. So that's about what we're going to do with this thing. So look for my kits within the next year or so that are going to be all kinds of different dolls, different poses, different sizes that you can redo and call your own. Okay, that's it on her. We're going to move right into the mermaid now. Okay, this is the main event for this particular film. It's a mermaid, and she's going to be swimming off of a piece of coral. So it's going to be a really beautiful piece when we're finished. Her tail fin is made out of Fimo decorating gel and 28 gauge wire. The bodice of her, not the bodice, but the lower portion of her body is gold leafing, and then I've incorporated it on the body, and then I've actually covered the entire thing with Fimo decorating gel to completely seal it, so the owner of this particular piece will not have gold leafing all over their hands, because it just really gets everywhere. So it's multicolored gold leafing. Now that was really kind of cool. It's a nice effect. And so what I've done is I've introduced a lot of the copper colors, and as pale as she is, I'm still going to put a lot of copper in her tones, and her hair is going to be like really coppery red, and it's going to be all out the back. I'm really, really full, and then she's going to have all kinds of beads around it. So we're going to start working on her face with the undertones, and then I'll work on her body and get all the undertones in, and then I'll go back and fire it all, and I'll go back and put the detail in her face last. That's generally how I do it. So we're going to start with a base color, and that would have a little bit of the red oxide in it, which is a rust color, and with a Flesh 07 or 6, any color, either one is pretty close. And let me see what we have here. Let's do a little sample. Oh yeah, this is perfect. It's got a little red oxide in it, as opposed to that pinky stuff that I usually recommend. But we're going to make her look a little different than most of my fairies. So I'm going to do this first. Anywhere on the body or on the face to start with. I've got some glazing medium in there to thin it down with. And it's just a matter of paint a lot of doll here. And see, it's a hard color, real pale white, big contrast, right up to the copper. So I want the coppers to work in and make the transition smoother. So I'll put some color in there. I could have used a darker flesh, but I didn't really want to. I wanted to make sure that she was still real pale. I just have to make them blend. You know, darker colors are difficult. Okay, I'm blending in the glazing medium with the rust color in it, and get some more in this area. More glazing medium. See, I'm just kind of dirtying her up with a little bit of rust, so I'm going to keep the highlights real pale. Okay. And we're going to accentuate things like her ribs just a little bit. Now, if you really put some serious paint in there, it wouldn't look natural. So keep it simple, folks. Keep it simple. Yeah, make this line a little deeper looking, right down the center. Just a little bit deeper. Okay. And if something starts to dry on you, this stuff dries on the surface of it, believe it or not, pretty quick. Just take some more glazing medium and work it up. And get it out of the areas that you don't want it, because it will dry on you even before you fire it. It's like soaking into it or something to that effect. Okay, do under her arm. It's a real faint color that I'm using on it now. Yeah, I hope you're able to see that. And I put a heavier color right under here where there's an actual body fold. And there's glitter all over this. I have glitter on this doll too, so it kind of got everywhere when I was getting carried away with it. A little bit deeper there. I use a lot of glazing medium. Everybody says, how do you get those dolls so pretty and shiny? And here it is. It's lots of this stuff. Deeper in this area. And just glob it in there. We can always wipe it down. Okay, I'm going to get rid of most of that on my brush and then feather it in. Everybody says, do you seal your dolls with something afterwards? I said, no, I don't. They have stuff Genesis makes stuff that you can seal with, but I was reading the labels on them, and they're more for paintings. They don't mention polymer, you know, so don't go there. And then you got to put, can you imagine putting a painting in the oven? Well, that's what it recommends. You can do it to heat it up and seal it. Good old embossing gun. You can't beat that approach. Okay, I'm going to put a little underneath. It's a little darker. So, give her some depth. Remember, she's going to have that fiery red hair that comes all the way down her. A lot of times I will go back and retrieve my highlights with paper towels. Okay. Guess I really don't need that on the top any longer. That was what I had it hooked to the ceiling of the oven with. Okay, glazing medium, gonna do the face. And I kind of give it, I'm going to give it a little suntan effect on the edges. And in the ears. Under the nose. In the eyes. I'm going to fire all this on first. And then go back and do the detail. You can just slop this stuff on. It's pretty good. You can wipe it down. Get your highlights wiped off, though, before you toaster. Just leaves a tiny bit of paint here and there. You don't want much. And I can go around and do the back side of this doll and turn her around, and you'll see that most of it has soaked in. It won't have that sheen, like that shiny stuff that it has right now. So let's move her around to the back side. And glazing medium, lots of it, right down the center. She has an owie. Ooh, not a good thing. So we want to try to get the paint out of that if we can. Yeah. No matter what you do, you're going to have an occasional little crack or blemish or something to deal with. But that is the nature of the beast. You can try to touch it up with paint, but most of the time it doesn't really work well. I've painted whole dolls with Genesis paint, solid, straight out of the tube. And it takes about 3 coats to really cover something completely, like you would, like oil paint or whatever. So I recommend never, ever to try to paint the whole doll. You can, you know, do fabric or whatever else you can on them, but to paint the whole doll, that's a bit much, and it doesn't really natural when it's done, no matter what color flesh you do. There's something about the actual color of the clay that's just so pretty. Just don't mess with it. They've got glitter here and there, but I can pick that out. It's not a problem. Go all the way down. Painting the palms of the hands. Glazing medium everywhere. Some areas just glazing medium, and some with a tiny bit of color in it. See, I use very little color, in case you didn't notice, on the body, because you want it natural looking. A little blush on the shoulder, just a smidge. It's got that red oxide color with a little bit of flesh 06 or 7. I don't know which one it was, but they're really close, so either one that suits you will work. A little bit of blush on the shoulders. Lots of glazing medium. It will soak in. And what doesn't soak in, where you don't want it, get rid of it. It just makes the paint thin out so much thinner, finer, easier to work with. Okay. For the hands, you put a, I wouldn't use the red oxide in it because it's going to make them look like they're bleeding. So just a few shades darker rather, than your normal color. Alright, a little blush on the top, a little blush on the elbow, wrist, back side of the hand, palm. And you can take a brush, a dry brush, and get this off, or you can just, all depends on how much color you want in it. But don't use red oxide. That's just for a mix of the glazing medium with this. Go back and get the surface parts. Keep the tips of her fingers, the darker color, the darkest part of the pink. See, fingers are darker. See, look. I don't look at my fingers, but they're darker. She might even want to put a second coat on that if you don't feel it's dark enough for you. But I can pick this out, hopefully, that little imperfection that's coming out of there. Okay, a few more little things to do, make it all blend in. And we're going to toaster and just get the surface color painted. Now, before you fire, you've got a chance to take glazing medium and get wherever it is you don't want color to push it out. Get the surface of it highlighted again with the basic, just the clay. Blend it in with your fingers any way you got to do it. See, be careful before you fire it. You would fire that thing on there. That's a big no-no there. Okay, glazing medium. See, just added natural tones to her, minus the glitter, of course. Okay, I'm going to fire her with the embossing gun, and see how the glaze in her face is soaked up, except for the heavier applications where it's under her nose and in her eyes and stuff. Yeah, it's soaked right into her cheeks already. So we're going to fire her now. And then I'm going to put her face color on, and the nipple color, and little accents where she might still need them. Now I'm going to paint her eyes, and the first thing I want to do, didn't used to teach it this way, but I found a new way. So steady your hand, paint the entire iris and pupil with a real dark brown or even brown and black mixed together. And what's going to happen is we're going to just put a little color inside where the iris is going to be, and we won't have to do all that edging around the outside of the iris to make it have definition, or the inside of the pupil, because it's in there now. We won't have to edge around everything. That's how it goes. Okay, now let's do both of them while we're at it. Ooh, just peck around at it. Don't be in a hurry, and steady your hand, for heaven's sakes. Try to get your paintbrush point rolled to a point as round as you can get it. Oops, a little out of the line there. Crooked, crooked, crooked. Oh well, we'll fix that with a little rubber tip tool. Okay, I take a little color off of the same brush that's got kind of a brownish tone to it, and pick up a little bit of the rust and put it in here. I'm going to make her so faint. The other ways I painted through this video, you've got all kinds of options. Well, I'm just going to go for the minimum of color on this one. I don't know if you can see that, but it's just barely any color. She's pale. That's what I'm looking for. Each doll is different. Minimum. Everybody does it different. And I probably do it 30 different ways. But you'll get locked in on a style of your own and really do a lot of it. Okay, what we're doing here is putting a little bit of that same glazing medium with the oxide color that I used on her body folds and everything underneath her eyes. I have to go back and fix that one iris, it's not too hot. Okay, and a little bit around the outside of her nose wings, inside of her nose holes. We may want to darken that a smidge more too. You know, it's not always the first color that you put on is the right color. You just want to keep playing with it until you get it the way you want it. I have a little bit of a line across the top with a little oxide color and the glazing medium. And you want to make sure that that is blended in. Do not just assume that that's going to be the right color to do. Everything has to be blended. See how much more natural her nose looks now? Alright. Okay, and we're going to put a little bit of it underneath of her chin, or on her chin rather. Right here. In the corners of her mouth. And I'm going to blend it back in again. Okay, I'm going to pick up my dark color again and try to do a little bit more on that one eye. Roll the point of the brush, please. Yeah, here we go. And I'm going to go down and make it the top eyelid, like eyelash area done. Keep it simple. This doll has a different kind of clay. I mixed, I made a boo-boo. I mixed 1 part Cernet that was kind of a yellow color with off-white or something, with 7 parts of the Pro Sculpt, so it really has a glow. It's nice. You have more Moonies with this, but gosh, it's so pretty. Make this a little darker. Sometimes you don't know what it's going to look like or how it come out until you've got one side and it's like a happy accident, and you say, "Oh, I want to make that match that other side." And that's what happened over here. It got really dark, and I thought, "Oh, that's a nice effect." She's got haunty looking eyes, doesn't she? Okay. We're going to put a little bit of the body fold color with the oxide and the burnt umber, and we're going to do her little eyebrows. Keep it tiny. And I see on this particular doll, I don't know if you can see it or not, but I have a raised indication in the actual clay itself that gives me an eyebrow line. Of course, you're never going to be able to stay on it with these little tiny brushes, but we'll balance it back out. And obviously that's going to be entirely too much paint, but that's what you have tools for. I just wipe it on myself, the paint that I pick up from this. And you don't want a witchy looking eyebrow, get rid of that. You're never going to get it in the first stroke. If you do, wow, let me know how you do it. I'll come take lessons from you. missing a little bit of brow there. So I have to go and put some more in there. Do it over and over till I get it right. Take your time. You don't want it too close, too going down too far here. You want to feather it out off. And you don't want to go out any further than the ball of your nose. Look at the front of this doll. Okay, the ball of the nose. If you go straight up, if you've got an eyebrow that comes over here, you're doing it wrong, and it is not pretty. So turn her upside down if you have to get it cleaned up on the back side. Here we go. That works. I kind of like her with brown eyes. So, but I guess we could have a little bit of the amber color in there, the rust color for her irises, just for the heck of it. Don't worry about the color of her eyes. I mean, there we go. So hard to see this. Goodness gracious. Just tap color, no matter what color you want, just right around. You're going to leave a little bit of the dark color on the outside edges of it, leave it solid dark color on the center where the pupil would be, and we're going to put a teeny tiny bit of silver, believe it or not, since I find it. Just a little, I mean, it's so tiny you wouldn't believe it, just a dribble on each eye. And that is your highlight. You do not need any more than that. Let's see if I can get it on there. I think I picked it up again. And all we've got left to do on this is blush and lips. And I'm going to call her done because I don't want very much on her. Okay. And of course I'll do the other eyebrow and everything else later. And when you see her at the end of the film, it should be totally finished. Okay. Let's do some of the Oxide Red outline for lip liner. The point of this brush is not sharp enough. Okay, here we go. Now what I tell you, lip color in the middle first. I want to keep it real natural looking, so we don't need much. Ooh, too much right there. But I'll pick it up. One's higher than the other. Just come across to make them kind of both that level. And then you can take your tool and whack it off at the top. And bring some of the color down into the lip.